Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carol. And good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel Caudillo. I serve as Senior Advisor at the White House Hispanic Prosperity Initiative in Washington, D.C. And my fellow judges are.
Good afternoon, I'm Jen Howell. I am the Co-Executive Director of Virginia Civics. We're the home of the Virginia We the People program. And I'm coming to you from just a few miles from James Madison's Montpelier, the historic home. So super excited to talk about Madison today.
My name is Tom Tinder and I'm an attorney from Charleston, West Virginia.
Now, may the panel introduce themselves as well as their teacher.
Hi, I'm Maggie Lynch. I'm the captain of Unit 3 from Fishers Junior High in Fishers, Indiana.
Hi, I'm Lincoln Bass.
Hi, I'm Navi Singh.
Hi, I'm Ella Robertson, and our instructors are Mike Fosseld and Tony Sturgeon.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to your presentation and the discussion that follows afterwards. But first, I'm going to read the question. And after I complete reading the question, then you may begin. In the Virginia Plan, James Madison proposed proportional representation in both houses of Congress. The delegates rejected Madison's proposal in favor of the Great Compromise. What is the Great Compromise and how was it justified? Do you think the founders' justification is acceptable today? Why or why not? What are the advantages and disadvantages of equal representation in the Senate? What are the advantages and disadvantages of changing the Senate to proportional representation? You may begin.
At the Constitutional Convention of 1787, there are two plans for the new government proposed. The New Jersey plan, supported by small population states, and the Virginia plan, which large population states supported. Neither plan would earn the 9 votes for ratification, so compromise was needed. The Connecticut Compromise, also known as the Great Compromise, found middle ground between the two. This new plan included equal representation in the Senate, now found in Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution. It also included proportional representation in the House of Representatives, which is stated in Article 1, Section 2. Although the compromise was not perfect in 1787 and today, the compromise was needed to ratify the Constitution. There are other justifications for the Great Compromise, which included both large and small states getting power in Congress. Our unit believes that the Great Compromise is not justifiable today because in 1787, the population of the country was much smaller than today, and representatives were representing less people.
Also, the justification might not be valid today because the original intention for the Senate is not followed anymore. Originally, the Senate was supposed to promote states and state needs, but now senators make decisions that align with their party. Due to this, significant compromise is less likely to happen, which can be seen recently when not a single Republican in the Senate voted in support of the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. In Federalist 62, Publius justifies equal representation by saying the government ought to be founded on a mixture of the principles of proportional and equal representation. Small states see equal representation as an advantage because it allows them to push their agenda and not get overshadowed by larger states. Another change that has occurred is that senators used to be elected by state legislatures until 1913 when the 17th Amendment was ratified. So the Senate signifies state sovereignty and state powers and makes the country a true union of equal states.
However, some states have a much larger population than others, such as California's 39.5 million people compared to Wyoming's 578,000. It could be argued that a Wyoming resident's senatorial vote counts 60 times more than a resident's vote in California. The smallest 10 states only have a combined population of around 10 million, which is smaller than California by itself. This large population state disadvantage violates the principle in our country of one man, one vote. In reality, equal representation is not equal, which can be seen where small states' important issues get a lot of attention and money. Another current disadvantage and result of party being more important than state is the filibuster. The Senate cannot pass any legislation to benefit a majority of the country unless it gets at least 60 votes. This provides small state senators with much more power because they can block legislation that they don't want.
Proportional representation is when representation is based on population of a state. Today in America, each member of the House represents about 700,000 people. There are advantages and disadvantages to this. A disadvantage to having solely proportional representation is that there's a high chance of small states only getting one representative in each part of Congress, which is why we need a balance between the two chambers. However, the purpose of the House is to be a direct voice of the people. So the most important advantage of proportional representation in the House is every state, no matter population, would have nearly the same impact on legislation. Adopting proportional representation would unskew US elections, according to Stephen Mulroy, who said, under winner take all, 51% of the vote controls 100% of the power, and a consistent minority of 40% gets nothing. Under proportional representation, 51% of the vote would roughly control 51% of the power. We have finished our testimony and are now ready for follow-up.
Excellent, thank you. And so I'll kick it off. We were just talking about this in regards to proportional representation. So if you were in the driver's seat, if you had the opportunity to make this change or not, I'm interested in hearing your opinion on this question. Should we change the Constitution to make representation in the Senate based on population? Why or why not?
I believe that we should change the Senate to a 3-2-1 or 5-4-3, which would be large states like California would get 5 senators, middle states like Indiana would get 4, and small states would get 3. This would allow for it to have a mix of proportional and equal, so that larger states, their senators and representatives are representing as many people, and it's more equal than actual equal representation.
I agree with my colleague Ella, but the only problem with switching to a 3-2-1 or 5-4-3 system is that we would have to pass an amendment to change the Constitution, which requires 3/4 of our states, which would probably never happen because the small states would never give up the power they hold in the Senate.
I think that we should switch to proportional representation because with states such as California, which has such high populations, one state senator for California represents around 19 million people, whereas it's much less for Wyoming. And if we switch to proportional representation, more people in California would get their voices heard.
I think that we should stay with equal representation because of how much of a voice it gives small population states. And so if we switch to proportional representation, small states can get overrun and their voices won't be heard anymore.
So the state thing is a sticky issue, right? Like you guys have studied this, you can't even agree on it. Why do we even need to have states represented? I mean, it's we the people after all. Why can't we just have representatives of the people and forget about representing states?
I think the biggest thing why we need to represent states is so that the legislative branch does not become overpowering, because as we can see with the Articles of Confederation, when we had a unicameral House, the legislative branch was really overpowering. So the biggest thing about having 2 houses in the legislative branch is a split between people's powers and states' powers.
And like Maggie said, it also helps with checks and balances on other branches, like the state saying, hey, well, this happened to like in state, it could help with state needs like hurricanes along the coast and everything like that, earthquakes or where it could happen. It really helps with that, like being able to call on like other states like, hey, we need help right now. Can you please send help to us?
You've made mention of political parties, and of course we have 2 major political parties here in the United States. There's other countries that have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 major political parties. Should we have more major political parties in the United States? Why or why not?
I believe that we should get rid of our 2-party system or add more parties, because with our 2 parties, they're always battling for power, and that results in very little compromise happening in our government because they refuse to go with the other party, as we can see with the COVID relief bill. While Republicans were talking it up, they still refuse to vote for Democrats. So if we had 3 or 4 parties, they would allow for more compromise and more things to be passed in Congress.
And different parties also bring different ideas to the table because different parties represent different topics, such as like the Green Party, they kind of represent the environment. And if we were to kind of make more parties, it would be able to represent more issues in our country.
As well, I think with our 2 parties, with our 2 majority parties, it really adds to the like tyrannical majority power in our country, because we have to let minorities in to speak their mind as well.
And with the two-party systems, like the Green Party also gets lumped in with like the other parties. And so like those really two major parties are really just a whole bunch of smaller parties lumped together, which also kind of defeats the purpose of having those other parties because they just get lumped in with each other.
Excellent. My next question comes from what I heard, a fact that was presented during your presentation, saying that right now about a representative represents about 700,000 people. Now, in your opinion, do we need to increase more representatives in the House of Representatives? Is that enough? Is that representing enough people, 700,000, or should representatives represent a little less than that?
I think a lot of it has to do like with the population and the census. And like, if people take the census, it all depends. Like if they take the census, then they'll get more representation. But if they don't, it kind of defeats the purpose of taking the census and having it so that the representatives get their, so that they're actually represented.
Going back to your question, I think that more representatives would help better the voice of our people, but at the same time, it could make Congress different. It could make the Electoral College different. It could make our entire country different, which is a big change to ask for.
And building off our colleague, at the Constitutional Convention and originally in the 1800s, each representative for the states had only represent 30,000 people, and we can see the drastic change to 700,000. But the House, I believe that we should increase the representatives because the House is supposed to be the voice of the people, and that's why they're elected for 2-year. They have 2-year terms, and so they shouldn't have to represent 700,000 people because they can't accurately represent all those people.
But if we were to add more representatives to the House, would small states get more senators? And if they wouldn't, then they wouldn't necessarily ever agree to that because they would lose even more of their power. And we wouldn't also want the House to get like overrun and like too many ideas going around. Then it would just become a jumble of ideas and no one would get anything done.
All right, so let's call a new constitutional convention, right? We're going to start a new Philadelphia convention. You can use the Great Compromise or not. You can scrap it and do whatever you want given the current makeup of the United States. What do you do?
Personally, I think our whole unit agrees on this. We would definitely get rid of the Electoral College because it does not follow the idea of one man, one vote.
We all agree on the idea that we would make the Constitution more inclusive, considering that women are never mentioned, and changing the things about slaves and adding more inclusivity so everybody is represented in the Constitution.
As well, I think our entire unit agrees in some way that we should adopt something new for the Senate, like the 3-2-1 system that we previously described.
I think we would also add in judicial review for the judicial branch, to add a large power for them.
And again, while we're talking about what we would change, we understand that we could never actually successfully have a new constitutional convention today, because most people wouldn't want to give up the power they have, and it would nobody would be able to play the role of George Washington, and it would be very just hectic if we called a new one.
As well, going off of what Ella said, our two parties would not be willing to compromise with each other, which would basically get nothing done.
And if we did have a new constitutional convention, it would be very hard to have it in private, like the original founders did have in private.
Continuing off of what Maggie said.
I have a question, and this is the most important question that we really want to get an answer to during this particular session. I don't get to ask it.
I'd like to commend you all on an incredible presentation. So make sure you take a deep breath. You've completed it. Congratulations. We thoroughly enjoyed it. As you can tell, we We had more questions coming up for you, but unfortunately, 8 minutes isn't as long as it used to be. So I'm like, oh. But we thank you so much. And I was just really impressed by just how you work together. That was amazing. That's when you know that you know the topic so confidently that you could depend on your teammates to back you up or to have that discussion between each other. And I loved how you each bounced those ideas with each other. I think it played really well and made your presentation go very smoothly as well. And so I commend you on that. So I'm going to allow my other fellow judges to also comment.
All right, so we came in from the breakout room and you all were like smiling and almost bouncing with excitement to talk about this. And I mean, that is just so amazing for us to see as judges. I mean, I mentioned James Madison's name, and then I saw your faces when Emmanuel said that we were doing question one, and you were like, yeah, we're doing question one. Like, you guys, that was awesome. That was so amazing. We had such a great conversation with you guys. I loved your different examples. You were very rational. I mean, in all of your reasoning through all of these very complex topics. I mean, you guys really shone. And I think, don't sell yourself short. If we get to that place where, hopefully not, if we get to a place where we do have to have a constitutional convention, don't say there's no one that can play George Washington, because any of you could do it.
Let me start out with the most important thing, and that is congratulations to your teachers and your mentors and coaches and whatever. That was just very, very impressive. I had the same comment that Jen did when we came on. You were smiling, and one of you was stifling a yawn, like, this is bring it on, we're ready. And then you went ahead and brought it on. Excellent presentation, excellent 4-minute presentation. This We the People program is supposed to be a congressional hearing where we're a congressional panel and you are experts that came in. Well, you certainly exceeded the expectation of being experts. You had so much information. I mean, it was like we turned on a fire hydrant and it just, all this information came out. And it was good information. It wasn't facts that didn't connect or information that didn't underline your arguments. I mean, you came up with 5, 4, 3, and you gave us both sides of that. And that's what you get in an expert situation, because we're just asking you questions and there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, what's your opinion and can you back it up? And then you did all those things. And then you went a step further and you gave us the other side, which is very important, so that we understand how you got to your position. Because, you looked at both sides or more sides, and finally you came down to this, and your group agreed upon it. Or maybe there was a dissenting opinion, which is no problem at all. It was just superb. And I must tell you, I put a big star. I ask everybody that political party question, and you nailed it. You just nailed it by giving both sides of why we should still have 2, why we should have more. It was just superb. You must not let this We the People competition end tomorrow. You must continue to provide your leadership and your knowledge and your expertise in your school and in your communities and in your state. Because if you do, then we're going to have a great future in your communities and in your states and in the United States. It was inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you so much for judging.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, judges. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very
Good seeing
much.
you all again.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and